Hello everyone. Today I'm going to be talking to you about my family ministry paper, and this is a presentation that's going to be focusing on the thesis, the method, primary findings, and some areas of improvement that I'm asking for your help on. And the focus of my paper is how to provide better care to intercultural families within the church. And my thesis is how can the church help families navigate cultural differences so that all are better integrated within the church without one culture being privileged over the other. This privileging over one culture is asking us to understand the need for cultural diversity and understand what that means. Cultural diversity is one of the greatest aspects of the U.S., but it's also one of our greatest challenges. I was reading a book on Multicultural Perspectives and Working with Families by Lane Congress, and she really presented this idea of moving from a melting pot to a beautiful mosaic, which I really liked because it takes away from all of us just that idea of a melting pot. We're all just molding into one, but a beautiful mosaic, which represents the differences, the beautiful things about our differences. And that's what I'm really focusing on in this paper. And so, we're in this constant search for a national identity of value as a society. And so we are learning and need to continue to learn how to embrace difference along with the tremendous treasures of a growing multicultural society. We need to increase our knowledge and skills in working with families with diverse backgrounds and different settings. The increase in globalization itself requires a new understanding of culture. So we have to understand all parts of culture, which that can be language, morals, philosophy of life, religious orientation, or views of the family. And so as I work through my method, I begin with giving you a little bit of definitional pieces on the differences on how I define multicultural church versus multi-ethnic. Whereas multicultural is not necessarily limited to ethnicity, it can also concern diversity amongst age, gender, social class. And this is very important, and this is a part of the paper, but for my focus, I'm using the term multi-ethnic church, which is implementing and preserving the distinctions of every ethnicity represented. So, once again, knowing that significance amongst the diversity, but making sure that each is being represented. And our churches should strive toward this equal view of each culture. And I think understanding the distinctions between a multicultural versus multi-ethnic church will better help us care for intercultural families and recognize where we need work and areas of improvement within our church and our ministries. One article I found some interesting facts from, and Kathleen Foley's work in an article I found called Cross the Ethnic Divide, talks about the importance of intentionality in institutionalizing diversity and modeling or teaching social skills for intercultural engagement. So the church has to be intentional about this. It's not going to just happen one day, by itself. We have to be intentional in recognizing the intercultural families we do have and be intentional in learning about them. This intercultural family perspective, we have to be intentional and willing. It doesn't work if we're not willing to share in the diversity among that family. Another article I found by Gerardi Marti on his work on multi-ethnic church, where he states that individuals among a congregation can share many havens, including ethnicity, but also with like-minded others. So he sees the significance in maintaining this distinction among ethnicity while being a part of a corporate church body. As we see in Acts chapter 11, the diversity amongst the church of Antioch. We also see this in Romans. The diversity in the church Paul is speaking to in Rome. And so this leads me into yet another part where I'm really focusing on a perspective of the Imago Dei. As we look at people with the image of God in mind, this creates a groundwork for us in recognizing that we are all the image of God within our diversity. God's creation was one of diversity and unity. So we have to work together to bring that diversity all in one, and as we are representing each ethnicity within our churches. In a work, a book that I found on by Dwayne Elmer called Cross-Cultural Conflict, he discusses this very idea, and that not only in this immense and grand variety of creation we could begin to capture the character, the grace, the glory of God, but that he could not adequately be revealed in a creation of similarities, but in a creation of diversity. And as he goes on to say, the process of learning about other cultures, affirming our various ethnic heritages, honoring and celebrating diversity, we enlarge our appreciation for God himself, who is authoring diversity by trying to tell us about himself. And I found this such a significant part of my research and a primary finding, and a reminder that God himself created all of these unique distinctions. So we should be striving to understand them. So this recognition of culture and this understanding of who God is as we see people through the Imago Dei. And this leads me into other parts of my model, such as the intercultural model of understanding and into conflict theory. Parts of the intercultural model is first the intentionality of the church, the willingness of the church to not only recognize but talk about the interrelationship of Christian faith and ethnicity. This first step will lead the church leadership and help them to become more self-aware of their personal cultural realities as well as the reality of the church culture itself. Every church has its own culture, which we have to also recognize and implement into how we care for different intercultural families within each church, which also leads into another significant point of understanding what intercultural communication is. It can be viewed as a type of intergroup communication between different social groups, but for the focus of this paper, I'm going to be focusing on interracial and interethnic groups, particularly families. Communication itself is establishing and learning about the thoughts and feelings that establish a commonality and community. So this communication among intercultural families will require an understanding of their different cultural contexts. Within different families, different groups, there's always different contexts in which they were raised up in. So the study of intercultural communication requires the study of basic concepts and considerations underlying that communication process itself, which is among different cultures. So we have to be able to not only be intentional and willing in understanding these cultures, but understand the contextual views. So this will lead us into other parts of the model, such as global influences, the dominant culture, and cultural differences that exist among each culture represented. And so this leads me into yet another part of the model where I'm talking about conflict theory. Conflict theory is essentially an analysis of social inequality. And so as I use conflict theory to question and look at different types of ethnic groups that we may see within families in our churches, we have to recognize or know what conflict theory is, such as it focuses on questioning morals, authority, violation of norms, moral exclusion, communication patterns, moral systems that understand their sources being revealed in truth that can categorize those who do not have the same beliefs. So as I look at this theory, and I think I need some more work done in this particular piece on conflict theory, it's basically a recognition of the social inequality that does exist, whether we want to recognize that or not. And so I'm using that as part of my method as well. And so as I transition from my method, I am going into talking about different cultural findings I found about different families, such as African American families, Mexican American families. What would those families look like in, for instance, a predominant white church? Or what would be the cultural conflicts that exist among those cultures within the church culture and the family, but not only that, the cultural differences among the family itself, such as if you have a Mexican individual and an Asian individual that are married, what does that look like? And so there's so many varieties and different ways to look at it, that I'm looking at different families and how those pieces of that method apply. And so in those areas are areas that I'm asking for your suggestions and considerations and areas of improvement. I think I need some more work in the method area and establishing um, a more narrow focus on what I want my method to be. I think I have a lot of pieces in the method, so maybe recognizing where I want that focus to be, and I'm asking for y'all suggestions and help on doing that. Um, in areas where you would like to see, what different cultures or different perspectives would you like to see in the paper? Are there particular cultural groups that you have in mind? And so I'm looking for ideas of how to better focus and transition my paper from piece to piece. I'm still doing work on it, and I thank you for your patience in waiting on me and getting this done. I will be sending you what I do have, and so that you do have that to look at. But I'm looking for a lot of suggestions. I've had some challenges with this paper, and I'm actually going to, not the personal challenge I've had, but challenges of um, tackling this topic. I'm going to also add into the paper. And so I'm looking for your suggestions, comments, concerns, and I just thank you for taking the time to listen to this presentation and read this paper. Thank you.